She asked me to dig up the body. In my early 20s, while many of my friends were navigating the maze of office cubicles or hustling their way through hectic shifts in retail and fast food, I stumbled into something entirely different, a part-time job at a cemetery. It didn't sound glamorous, and it certainly didn't make for a lively conversation starter at parties. But for someone like me, who cherished quiet moments and found solace in stillness, it was unexpectedly perfect. The cemetery stretched far beyond what you could see from the front gates. Winding paths curled through groves of old trees, and the headstones were arranged like open pages in a book only a few of us knew how to read. There were ancient plots overgrown with ivy and newer sections with pristine marble markers. The whole place breathed, not with life, but with memory. My job, on the surface, was simple: mow the grass, trim the hedges, clean debris, and make sure everything looked serene and dignified. But it didn't take long before I realized it was much more than landscaping. The job came with a kind of weight, not the kind that crushed you, but the kind that anchored you. It was a place where people came to face the finality of life, and I was, oddly enough, a witness to it all. My supervisor, Mike, had been working the grounds for more than 30 years. He looked like he belonged to the place, weathered, quiet, calm. He had that air about him, like a tree that had withstood all kinds of seasons. Every day, rain or shine, he wore the same windbreaker, faded tan, with a tear at the cuff he never bothered to fix. His voice was low and raspy, and he didn't waste it on small talk. But when Mike spoke, you listened. And if you listen closely, you learn more than just how to care for a graveyard, you learned how to care for people in their most delicate moments. He taught me how to edge a headstone without chipping the marble, how to spot where the soil would sink after rain, and how to keep squirrels from nesting in the wreath bins. But more than that, he taught me how to be present, how to stand quietly while someone cried, how to nod at just the right moment, how to fold my hands when words felt too heavy. Most days were peaceful. I'd start early, before the sun had fully warmed the dew on the grass. I'd pull on my gloves, crank up the mower, and spend hours alone among the rows. I always wore earbuds, playing everything from audiobooks to philosophy lectures, but sometimes I just listened to the wind. You start to notice things in the silence: the sound of leaves scraping stone, the way flowers lean toward the morning sun, the names etched into the world forever. There were regulars, people who visited the same graves every week. An older man who brought his dog and sat on a folding chair beside his wife's headstone. A teenager who left candy wrappers and poems beside her brother's marker. A pair of twins who sang softly to the grave of the woman they both called Mom. But for every peaceful moment, there were also the unpredictable ones. Some people came grieving, some came confused, and others came angry, not at us, but at death itself. And then there were the Janines of the world. Janine was unforgettable. Tall, stylish, dramatic, she swept into the funeral office like a woman on a mission from an entirely different reality. She wore oversized sunglasses that stayed on indoors, and her perfume arrived a full 3 seconds before she did. She was there to bury her uncle, Marvin. He'd left instructions: a simple burial, next to his wife, no frills. But Janine had plans. She hated the neighboring gravestone, said it was leaning in a way that disrupted the visual harmony of the space. She thought the grass looked artificial. She wanted to rotate the grave for spiritual balance. I tried my best to keep the conversation grounded, to redirect her energy toward decisions that could actually be made. We were almost done, papers signed, plot selected, when she leaned in, voice lowered, like we were sharing a secret. "So, when do you dig him up to put him in the casket?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" "You know," she said, as if it were obvious. "You bury the body, and then once it's, settled, you put it in the casket later. Right?" She was serious. Absolutely serious. I smiled gently, not mocking, just amazed. "No, Janine. We don't bury the body first. The body is placed in the casket, and the casket is placed in the ground. That's the whole process." Her mouth fell open slightly. "But then, he just stays there?" "Yes," I said. "Forever. That's kind of the point." She left shortly afterward, clearly shaken by the permanence of burial. A few days later, she posted a 3-paragraph Yelp review accusing us of gaslighting her about modern funeral customs and saying the cemetery lacked metaphysical compassion. Mike printed it out and taped it to the breakroom fridge. Later, he had it framed. "Everyone needs a North Star," he said. "Ours is Janine." After Janine, things returned to a steady rhythm, or as steady as things ever got when your job involved grief, rituals, and the occasional unexpected moment of comedy. We still talked about her, of course. Her Yelp review had become a sort of workplace scripture, something we quoted during slow afternoons when the lawnmower wouldn't start, or someone dropped a vase mid-ceremony. But Janine was just one note in a chorus of encounters. Mike once told me, Every plot has a story. But sometimes, the people standing beside it are even more fascinating. He was right. And the longer I worked there, the more I began to see how deeply personal, and often strange, the grieving process could be. Like the woman who brought a box of cereal to her dad's grave every Sunday morning and poured a little milk onto the soil. Or the man who asked us to play Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven on repeat during his brother's burial. He set up a Bluetooth speaker on the grass and sat cross-legged for the entire 8-minute track, 3 times in a row. Not all requests were approved, of course. There was the guy who wanted to be buried in his lazy boy recliner. Health codes said no. And the family who asked if we could place their grandfather's ashes inside a fishing tackle box. We found a tasteful compromise. The tackle box was kept at home, the urn buried nearby. Ryan, our newly hired assistant groundskeeper, had started shadowing me around that time. Fresh out of school, quiet, and curious, he was eager to understand the unspoken rules of this odd profession. "Is it always this weird?" he asked once as we cleared an aisle of overturned flower pots. "Define weird," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "We just found a plastic flamingo dressed like Elvis next to a veteran's grave." "Then yes," I smiled. "But it's also meaningful. That flamingo? Might have been an inside joke. A way to say I remember you with a laugh." We walked the rows for hours some days. There was an entire section of the cemetery we called the Memory Garden. Not its official name, just what we called it. People left keepsakes there, stuffed animals, painted rocks, handwritten notes sealed in sandwich bags. One child's grave had a toy truck that had rusted in place. Another had a laminated comic strip taped to the marker. Each item was its own message, a coded language of grief and love. Ryan noticed the patterns quickly. "This row gets the most foot traffic," he said. "All kids." "Yeah," I nodded. "People stop here even if they didn't know the family. There's something about a child's grave. It makes everyone pause." We didn't have the heart to remove the toys. The maintenance manual said we should after a certain time, but Mike had long ago decided some rules were meant to be gently bent. That spring, we held the annual remembrance event, a ceremony for the unclaimed, the forgotten, and those buried without visitors. Mike had started it years ago, and I'd carried it forward. We printed a list of names from our archives and read each one aloud beneath the oldest tree on the grounds. It wasn't a large event. 12 people, maybe. Some were staff, some locals who came every year. We placed a single white flower at the base of the tree for each name. Ryan asked if we'd ever had someone come forward and claim a grave because of it. "Once," I said. A woman recognized her great-aunt's name. She hadn't known where she was buried. Brought a photo the next week. Left it in a frame by the stone. That memory stuck with Ryan. He began visiting the oldest sections of the cemetery during breaks, photographing worn markers and looking up names in the archives. "Even if no one's left to remember them," he said, "they still deserve to be known." It wasn't long after that when we had what Mike had called a quiet storm, a string of burials with no attendees. 5 in 1 month. All elder individuals. No family. No visitors. Just us, a minister, and silence. One of them was Mr. Doyle. We knew little about him. No obituary, no service. Just a body, a date, and a plot number. Ryan insisted we do something more. He found a quote handwritten on a note card and placed it inside a clear sleeve on the headstone. "Every life leaves a trace. Even if no one was watching." It was simple, profound, and exactly right. After that, we started doing more small things. Leaving fresh flowers anonymously. Straightening leaning markers in the neglected rows. Lighting a candle in the chapel when the day's last visitor had gone. Sometimes, in the late hours, I'd walk the grounds and whisper names aloud. Just so the wind could carry them. As summer edged in, the cemetery shifted again. The grass grew faster, thicker. Flowers bloomed and wilted at twice the pace, and visitors came in short sleeves, often with children in tow. There was a kind of casualness to it all. The grief didn't disappear, but it softened. People lingered longer. Laughed more. I saw a father lay down a picnic blanket near a plot. His 2 kids ran circles around the headstones while he sipped from a thermos and read aloud from a novel. At first, I worried, was this too casual? But as he closed the book and whispered something toward the stone, I saw it. Grief doesn't have to look like mourning. Sometimes it looks like Sunday. That was something Mike had taught me too. He used to say, people visit the way they lived. Loud families grieve loud. Quiet ones sit with it. That summer brought a heat wave that cracked the dirt and made every task harder. Even the sprinklers seemed to sigh when they sputtered on. Ryan and I adjusted schedules, came in earlier, and stayed later. We started placing temporary shade covers for people who visited midday, a small gesture, but appreciated. The highlight of July was Ellis, the magician. He'd passed at 67, and his final wish was, unsurprisingly, theatrical. He'd arranged for his casket to be delivered in a fake magician's box, the kind used for the sawing a person trick. The box had sparkles, gold lettering, and a plaque that read, "The Great Ellis, now performing elsewhere." The funeral included a Dove release, a recorded laugh track, yes, really, and a eulogy delivered by a former assistant dressed in a tuxedo. It was over the top. It was perfect. I'll never forget the way people laughed through their tears that day. Afterward, Ryan looked at me, half smiling. "That was the weirdest funeral I've ever seen. But did it feel wrong?" I asked. "No. Not at all." That's what stuck with him. That a funeral didn't have to feel like a funeral to be meaningful. Late that summer, Mike sent us a box. No return address, just a handwritten label, for the office. Inside was a framed photo of the oak tree, a thermos lid with a post-it saying "Best coffee under the sky," and a dusty paperback titled "Everyday Grace for Cemetery Men." Ryan laughed when he opened the cover. Mike had inscribed it with, "Kid, if you're reading this, I'm either retired or dead. Either way, keep the weeds short and the memories long. M." We placed the photo on the office shelf, next to Barbara's framed Yelp review and Janine's apology letter. Yes, Janine had sent another letter. This one longer, more vulnerable. She shared how volunteering at a hospice changed her understanding of death. She even included a donation to our remembrance event. Ryan hung her second letter beside the first. "She gets it now," he said. "Maybe we all get it, eventually." Autumn arrived, curling the leaves into rust-colored hands. We prepared for another season, winter burials, holiday remembrance, more quiet rituals. Ryan was starting to take more initiative. He greeted families, maintained the archive, left a painted stone at an unmarked child's grave, just because. One evening, I found him sitting alone near the tree where we read names. A small notebook lay open beside him. "What's that?" I asked. "Stories," he said. "Just little ones. Fragments. I figure if someone reads them one day, it's like they lived a little longer." I sat down next to him. The sky turned orange behind the chapel spire. "You're going to be great at this," I said. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I already love it." I didn't expect that. Me neither, I admitted. There's a rhythm to this work. A strange, silent music to the way grass bends, wind moves through names, people cry, people laugh, and eventually, people leave. But we stay. We hold it together. And as winter approached again, I looked out over the rows and realized something I hadn't before. We don't just bury people. We bear witness. To be present at the end is a rare kind of honor. Not glamorous. Not easy. But quietly sacred. That's what this job became for me. That's what Mike passed on. What Ryan would carry next. One evening, after we closed, I walked the rows with a flashlight and my old notebook. I'd filled it over the years, names, quotes, odd little stories. I flipped to the back page and added one more. Ryan, sitting under the oak, writing lives into the wind. And that's how it continues. Not just in stone. Not just in flowers. But in memory. In story. In the small things we do, long after everyone else has gone home. The end.